Chapter 24, Things to Consider. Amy and I decided to keep all the photos and information on Kepler F and E to ourselves before we ever left this planet. We figured out that this technology, if given to the world, would be exploited in a way that we could not be responsible for or have on our conscience. Explorers would come here and ruin everything, because once they found out about the people that own this world and how few in number they are, they would probably take their world from them. All these thoughts ran through our minds during our spare time. This was a paradise, just as America was to Native Americans, and we decided to buy them time and probably help them to defend it at some later time in the future, if need be. If the demonstration of our technology upon our return was still even needed, we would only show them what we had planned in the beginning, if we needed to at all. We knew that everything would change by the time we got back, and scrutiny could ruin the happiness of those on Kepler E. So by the time we get back to Earth, Amy and I decided if our friends had already exposed this technology to the public's attention, we wouldn't be needed and we would stay quiet. Probably we would return to KE at a later date and not say a word about the Kepler system. We would come back home with all the information on the system burnt onto disks to hide it, and then we would delete it from our hard drives. We would keep it to show our friends. Maybe they would agree, and we knew this for sure, with us about all of our decisions, but we really had no idea what we faced back there. We could secretly show them that there was other life out there, and there was a strange event that happened in our past related to these people. There was even a stranger event that took place on Kepler F that we have yet to fully examine, but we really didn't exactly know what or why of it for sure. The only way to know for sure was to go back to Kepler F and E. We had stayed on Kepler E for 2 more days when we finally left, wondering and worrying about the timeline phenomena. We knew we couldn't use the vortex theory without waiting longer for everything here to line up. It wasn't going to do that for weeks, and we couldn't wait. So we would just use whatever was on the back of Kepler E. It wouldn't be a full alignment, but it should help. Their year here was about 145 days, and their days were measured in 28-hour periods. We would have to wait approximately another 4 months for the exact alignment between their sun and planet Earth's sun, while boosting off of Kepler E. Although we could boost off Kepler E anyway, it just wouldn't be at maximum energy. We didn't even know if it was needed. Amy asked me on our first day with them, so how do we do this? I don't know yet. I'll have to think for a while. We'll come up with something. They called us the Sky People, and that first night with them, they threw a great ceremonial party as a welcome and as a way to make us one of them. It took them a while to accept that we were all related and the same. We met their leader, who was one of the older generations and an original inhabitant of the Roanoke colony. He was very old, but he didn't look old. These people had a longer lifespan here, and this was truly amazing, she said. Their chief and all could speak in English, in an older version, the King's English. It was so cute, and they knew Algonquin, plus they combined them both and had their own Cajun-like language, which is the best way to describe it. It was tough to understand, though. We had so many questions to ask, and they likewise. We asked them what they thought about their longevity after telling us what they believed about life. They said that helping each other, no worry or jealousy, was the answer. They asked us many things about the world they had once come from. We gave them a brief American history lesson, and that they were mentioned briefly in our history books. They were dazzled by that. We came up with a solution on how to give them the information that would help them advance in medicine if need be, which they may or not need, and sciences that would help them to catch up to us at least somewhat and make their lives a little easier. And me and Amy mulled that over for a while before actually doing that. You know, Amy, we are limited on what we can give them. I know, but I have an idea. Well, what do you propose? I can give them some information mind to mind as far as simple information, simple skills. How about you? I found in one of Carl's manuals blank sheets of paper for notes that I can write and draw on. They need some permanence here. You know, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So what are you thinking? I see. You reading me? Yes, my love. I'll write the categories we want to give them in an outline form and draw schematics or pictures as you teach them the subject mind to mind. So they'll have a written record of what we're trying to give to them. I think the most receptive is Greg, she said. He is able to talk to me from time to time in my mind, and I'll find one or two more like him so I can split the information amongst them so they can remember the information more easily. So what are the best things to give them? Well, we'll really have to think about that one, she said. I was stumped for a moment. What knowledge would you give a more primitive civilization so they could advance easily and quickly? We had thought out all the reasons, pro and con, on whether to do this or not, and our logic dictated that we needed to do this for their protection at this point, and according to what we would reveal later to Earth, unless it was already revealed. We didn't know who might come looking for us. It could be possible now, in today's Earth time period, if the information was released by our crew members about this technology, they may come looking for us. If not, it might take Earthlings 100 years to find this habitable world, or just a few years from now. We didn't know. Could be tomorrow. We weren't worried about our crew members. We were worried about everyone else, like China, Russia, or even North Korea, and maybe even the U.S. government. We described how our special or psychic senses had increased while we traveled, and that there must be another reason for us to become so aware. We also let them know everything about why it was important to the Earth now, in this time, to get this type of technology so that they too could advance, and how if the Croatoans were brought up to speed on history and the sciences, that their world wouldn't suffer the same fate that ours was facing now, and it would protect or help protect from them intruding. So some politics was thrown in there. We also let them know that we would divert attention away from them when we returned home, and that we would return to help them advance even quicker at a later time, and played out scenarios on why and how it would become important and it would benefit them and the planet they lived on, plus the fact that we might be closely related and that we could even be relatives. Our answers were accepted. They fought us a little bit at first, but Amy put in their minds the pictures with the language of what and how capable they are, basically, and what they would do. The science behind locating planets that were habitable, and the reasons why we had to take this tech back to the people so they could understand the resources were plenty in the universe. They just had to have a way to harvest them and to get around quickly. This technology may stop all the nonsense about fighting over borders, over resources, and food. All factories could be built in space without polluting the planet, and so on. So after this, they accepted. They knew about divine intervention and accepted our offer, since they knew their fate was already blessed with divine intervention. They read it in us the same way we were able to read it in them. So after 2 days with the Croatonians, learning and teaching from each other, we left for home, promising to return in about 7 to 10 years or sooner. We just weren't sure yet. There was so much we still had to learn about light travel and time travel, and at this time we didn't have the time to experiment, so we stuck with what we knew. The people of Kepler E knew what we were doing and the reasons why. It took us some time to convince them we had to leave, because they didn't want us to leave. Their reasoning wasn't devious, it was of admiration and the link to each other, which filled in the gaps to their knowledge of history and science, and now with some of the simplest advancements we gave them. This would make life somewhat easier, and we became great friends. They had some of the funniest expressions when they tried to light their ceremony fire with a bow, and I walked up with a Bic lighter and sparked it immediately. I also had to explain to them, as we gave them 2 of those and several packs of matches from our sea rats, that these things were expendable. They would run out when the gas was gone or the matches were gone, but it was a gift that they could have to be able to tell how much easier their lives would be in the future, and they accepted that also. They wanted to know more because they understood the dangers of other humans or of the fallen, and we had to figure out how to give them enough information so they could advance and be safe still. And so when we returned, they would be advancing and catching up on their own for a while, and that would help them immensely. They also had their own Bible, and they read from it on what they considered to be their Sabbath, and we compared ours with theirs, and they were both similar. And we explained to them about Earth and the fallen that had come to Earth, who degraded everything, and how the Earth had fell into sin, and the reason why they were possibly on KE, because they were probably some of the most innocent beings that were ever born on Earth, and that this was a place for them to start new, and they had done a great job of it. And they understood what we were facing when we went back, or as we were gonna go back. And they basically knew that they had to protect themselves from what may or may not come their way. Later, we would make their lives even greater, easier, and they would too for us in their way. We had exchanged gifts, and those would change them as their love and artful gifts had changed us. We had to leave as we settled in, finally, above the atmosphere of Kepler in an orbital plane. Amy asked, "Are we ready to engage our drive?" "Yes, I'm going to take us right up to level 9 as soon as I am certain we're on the right track, on the path. Then level 10 and open up a wormhole. I'll wait till we get near light speed and program the computer to send our message. Then we'll try after light speed, and then we can relax. I'm now entering the coordinates, and we'll engage level 1 first, then make sure we're still on track, then level 9, and then 10. Shouldn't take very long at all. A few minutes. There would be no hesitation to reach light speed, as we were now eager to get home. We had lots of things to prepare and think about. They were lovely and innocent, beautiful people, weren't they, Mike? Yes, they were. I'm envious in a way. They lived the way all humans on Earth should live. This was the idea behind our future endeavor to return here. It was a return to what we were meant to be. It was simple, loving, and respectful. Amy asked an important question. Do you know how important the discovery of life on other planets is to the world, my dear? Yes, I do. And how important it will be to those who truly own their world, who are truly free, who are less developed. So I don't feel bad not saying anything about this, considering how humanity has behaved in the past, what the past history about humans have shown us. I am in agreement, she stated. We have enough to deal with, but will we truly be able to hide them for long once we give this tech to the world? Good question. It seems to me that the only way to hide them is that it never occurred, and the best way is to contact the boys and let them know not to reveal where we have been. We let them know we're continuing with the original plan, starting on the way back from the moon as planned before. What are you saying? She asked. Well, we have the recordings of us leaving, and we doctor it and splice it so it appears to have just happened in their present time, and that's all they see. Good plan. And then stated, since we haven't aged much, we could just say that we are the youngest of the crew. Exactly, that would give the Crotons at least some time till they are discovered, if ever. But you know, it'll likely become inevitable sooner or later, and we do need to return and help them come up to speed with our representation and knowledge of history and science. We would know how to fight for them better than they would. That's right. That's why we aren't going to tell them, and that will allow the Crotons time to catch up as much as possible, she said. I'm in agreement. They will learn much just from those gifts we left them, let alone all the other things that we taught them that they needed to learn, because it's just a matter of time till they're probably discovered, and they understood that and accepted it. Just make sure in your message the crew is not going to tell anybody where we have been, and then you can send it. Got it. Then Amy started laughing and reminiscing back to the initial meeting with their leader and his parliamentary council. The leader was so cute with his accent, wasn't he? Yes, and he was the eldest, and so odd since he looked so young. They all respected his authority and opinions. His age was amazing when you compare it to Earth's timeline. Their longevity is so much greater. He looked to be in his 50s, but he wasn't. Yes, we'll have to look into that more, but if you took in the fact that their year was around 200 days shorter on the average, and their day 4 hours longer, it seems that this has something to do with it. Wouldn't you think? Amy answered, yes, and gravity, which made us super strong there. How about when the tribe baptized us so they could absorb us into their culture? I was amazed, I have to admit, and relieved. It's kind of weird or lucky for us, the fact that they adopted the Christian ways for their beliefs, which amazes me. They assimilated the two main cultures and beliefs just as Christianity had done with some of the pagan beliefs like Rome and Greece did to make it acceptable to all the diverse populations. Amy brought up a good point about them also. What is very strange is the diversity of the races there, because they were still blending, but most of them looked as if blending had been accomplished, but genetics are uncertain. It's an uncertain science, as blending brought out some of the stronger traits from time to time as people lived their lives and produced offsprings. Yes, and on Earth it happens too. I'm finding that it seems someone thought this all out, and since we are hearing from the meeting of our cultures that our intervention was somehow part of that plan, maybe to introduce more genetics, maybe more knowledge, but why? Well, the odd thing is the number of them brought here from Roanoke Island. 144 people. That number sounds so familiar. I heard that number before, I agreed. It seemed familiar. I don't know right now, she said, but it seems important that we know somehow. Their food was excellent, wasn't it? Yes, it was. You know, my love, I wouldn't mind it at all if we came back here to stay and have children here. We could truly have some peace. You fell in love with them, didn't you? She laughed. Yes, it's like paradise here. We'll see. I like it here too, but first we have to try to save our home world if that's what we're supposed to do, if it's still an option, she stated. As far as returning here, there would be much to think about. Setting up what to bring. We'd need a much larger capacity for storage, so the logistics of a move like that would be a lot to consider. You know that. Yes, I would want some of our conveniences too. Let's take it one step at a time for now. But I am pleased you want children with me, she stated. I haven't thought about that till now. You must truly love me to give me such an honor. I do love you that much. In this life or any planet in this universe and any afterlife, I'll always love you. We embraced, kissed as I stroked her hair, then down her back, and soon after our embrace, I said, "Let's go home. We need to share this with the people we have grown to love there also." "Agreed, my love. Let's do it." I put the ship on autopilot, pushed enter, and we proceeded to speed up to level 9, then 10, and in a short time exited the solar system we now loved. Our force field increased to maximum, and it would take about 15 minutes, by my calculations, to reach above light speed before it would seem to be an instant. We knew that approximately 7 more years would pass on Earth, but not for us. Next, Chapter 25, Message Sent.